For a number of decades now, members of Congress have had access to a little-known clinic and pharmacy very close to the House of Representatives that's run through a membership program. Through this clinic, they can gain easy access to drugs very close to their place of work without, for the most part, having to deal with regular people or have it be clear that they're going for those drugs and things like that. Now, this by itself is not necessarily all that important or all that interesting. But recently, the pharmacist at that little pharmacy has come out and talked a little bit about some of the prescriptions that he's been giving without being too specific. And so we want to give you information about the clinic and also the consequences legislatively coming out of the clinic. Now, it's the deliveries of these drugs that come for the basically private use of the representatives, go to the office of the attending physician, and Navy doctors perform like basic triage of medical emergencies. Like you want to have it very close in case there's a problem. They had a period decades and decades ago where several representatives died in a short period of time. So it makes sense at that point that they had it. It makes a little bit less sense now when there's a CVS on every corner.
That was in 1928.
Exactly. Now, at its busiest, it sends as many as 100 prescriptions to members in a day, which is not exclusively to representatives, but it's mostly to them, and that's a lot. Now, there are many prescriptions that a person can get. The average American diet is horrendous, and so it's our natural destiny that we will end up on various forms of drugs at some point in our life. But there are ones that make you stop and make you think just a little bit. So this is Mike Kim, the pharmacist, talking about his experience and says, at first it's cool, and then you realize I'm filling some drugs that are for some pretty serious health problems as well. And these are the people that are running the country. He listed treatments for conditions like diabetes, which is fine, and Alzheimer's, which seems a little bit more consequential. And he goes on to say, it makes you kind of sit back and say, wow, they're making the highest laws of the land, and they might not even remember what happened yesterday.
Mike Kim is definitely gonna get in trouble.
Yes, Mike Kim is screwed. Now, like he didn't reveal exactly who it went to. Maybe he hasn't broken the law. I would take a vacation if I were you.
Yeah, I know. I'm not concerned that he broke the law, but look, and he didn't say Republican or Democrat. In fact, the one example he gave was of, and not related to any Alzheimer's or diabetes or anything. He just gave the example of John Kerry, who's a Democrat. He said he came in the day after he lost the election, and he's like, isn't that amazing? That guy could have been the president of the United States. He was surrounded by Secret Service. The next day he's a schlep waiting for waiting in line for his drugs at the pharmacy, which I actually love that about America. I wish we had that happen more. But so it's not political in that sense, but nor do I think it's a violation of law. I just feel bad for him because I feel like lawmakers are gonna be like, you let people know that half of us are getting prescription for Alzheimer's and we don't know what the hell we're doing. That could be trouble for him.
Yeah, and I noticed, so this was, I think I originally saw it on a Raw story, I believe, and the comments were almost universally apparently conservatives saying, the Dems on drugs, it's probably Schumer, it's probably Pelosi. Like that's what you're scared of? The people who have absolutely no power or ability to enact laws, that's what you're worried about, that they have Alzheimer's? How about the people who are actually passing the bills? How about I'm not even gonna name names, but let's think back to some political events of this year. Were there any, perhaps Republicans, who had weird difficulties expressing themselves and remembering things? No. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. And now you hear Alzheimer's, and my grandfather actually is pretty deep in Alzheimer's at this point. It's a very debilitating and a very sad condition that affects a lot of Americans. But we don't know that they're at the deep end of Alzheimer's. Maybe they're just at the very beginning. And so I looked up the early stages of Alzheimer's, and here are some of the effects that it has. Problems coming up with the right word or name, fine. You have a little bit of trouble speaking, that's not a big deal. Trouble remembering names, challenges performing tasks in social or work settings, forgetting material that one has read, losing or misplacing objects, increasing trouble with planning or organizing. Those are things that it does not take a big leap of logic to figure out how that could affect a person that's working in a legislative setting or working in committee meetings or any of that. Now, as really fast as JR pointed out at today's production meeting, the only thing saving us here is that none of these representatives or senators actually make up their own mind. They just vote the way their donors tell them to. So perhaps the Alzheimer's doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But it is still worrisome.
Yeah, well, that's partly where I was going with this. First of all, to be fair, the pharmacy also services staffers, lobbyists, and family members. So not everybody getting the Alzheimer's medication is in Congress, but very likely some are, and staffers are younger. And so this does go to two actual problems. One is that the people in Congress are uniformly incredibly old on average. I mean, Dianne Feinstein just said she's running for re-election. She's 84.
By the end, 84?
Yes, by the end of her term, she would be 90 or 91, okay? So, and the reason is, once you have money and power and you've got a good donor base and good name recognition, you just hang on for dear life. And they stay there and they're ancient. And in my opinion, the corruption sets in and it calcifies. So that's the bigger problem. They guys, don't worry about that. They don't remember the bill. They never read the bill in the first place. So remember that talking point that Republicans had about the Democrats? Oh, you didn't read the Obamacare, did you? Later, they went on to say, they bragged how they didn't read their own legislation, and that was only 13 pages. They never read it.
There's a lot of things they have to do that are not reading or voting on bills though.
No, there's only one thing they read, the email from the donor which tells them which way to vote. Okay, so the Alzheimer's, unfortunately, is the least of our problems in this corrupt system. Watch the Young Turks commercial-free, download it or stream it, watch it any way you like at tytnetwork.com/join.